Hello, everybody. My name is Lat Mackey, and this is Sequence Break. I forgot the intro. It's been so long since I've done this. I forgot what it's a podcast that does something. I don't know. Let's give it a try. What happened?
Good luck.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lat Mackey, and this is Sequence Break, a podcast that features conversations with speedrunners, content creators, developers, and everything in between. Thanks so much for being here. If you're listening to this like in 2025, none of this is going to matter what I'm about to say. But if you're listening to this in 2021, been on a little bit of a hiatus if you haven't noticed. As seems to be like the common theme every single time that I start a podcast nowadays. Real life. What are you going to do? Day job. Stuff gets in the way. I finally finished my master's degree. I have sort of learned how to manage a day job. Have not learned how to manage anything other than that. So hence here we are with a bit of a delay in between episodes. Here's the good thing. My life is finally starting to settle down a bit. After I think this next coming week here, I've already started contacting some guests to join the show again, and we're going to start this thing back up. The goal is going to be twice a month. The goal is twice a month. We'll see if that actually happens. There was one episode posted in October, and it's similar to this one. It's going to be something that I've already recorded before because that's a little bit easier to get out right now than something else. And I appreciate your patience as we try to stick with this thing. I try to get it going again because I got to tell you, this is one of my favorite things that I've ever had a chance and an opportunity to do. And I would like to keep on doing it as long as people want to be guests and people are actually listening to it. So all that being said, what is today's episode? Well, this is a piece from, I'm looking back, it looks like I did the show in April. It's one of the GDQ, the Games Done Classic episodes. And we were looking back at Awful Block. And I've been recently watching a fair amount of Brossentia's stream. And I think I've come to this realization that I could pretty much listen to Brossentia talk about anything. Doesn't really matter. I could just listen to him spiel on about it and I would be satisfied, excited, laughing, and having a good time, I'm sure. If you got a chance to see the Awful Block episode we did, this clip, this isn't the whole episode, but it's a chunk from it. It was one of the segments we did, and we looked back at Avoid the Noid and Virtual Highlight, kind of some GDQ staples with Mike Uyama, PJ, Lizstar, and Brossentia. And there's a little bit of a chat early on before we actually get into the games. And just listening to it made me smile. I'm surprised I was actually able to think of any questions while we were talking because I realized how much of a good time I was having just listening to these folks get together and talk video games. I hope you enjoyed the same way I did. And more episodes coming soon. Who's going to be next? I have no idea. Whoever says yes first. That's pretty much the way this is going to work. But I promise you, there will be some more Sequence Break podcast, actual new episodes. So thanks for sticking with here. I hope you enjoy this one. It's a fun one. It's a great way to just, reconnect and remember what it's like chatting some video games, speedrunning, and all that jazz. Enjoy. And welcome back to Games Done Classic, where we look back at legendary GDQ moments with the legends that made them happen. Today is all about Awful Block. If you are watching this live right now on Twitch, we are live, folks. So if you're in the chat and you want to throw out any questions, want to comment or anything like that, we will see it. I promise you we are live. If you're on YouTube, thank you so much for watching and supporting all the live content here on GDQ Hotfix, twitch.tv/GDQ. We are looking back at all of some really fun moments from Awful Block. If you missed the first segment, it was all about the history and how did Awful Block get started. But now let's turn the page a little bit and let's bring in, when I think of awful games, I got to be honest, folks, I think of all the people you see on the screen right now. So fortunate to be joined by, once again, Mike Uyama and PJ. Welcome back. And
Thank
now,
you.
Joining us, Brossentia and Lizstar. Thank you both for being here and joining us today on the fun stroll down memory lane, if you will, of awful games.
Yeah, good to be here. Good to be here.
Where to even start with all of this, but I think the first part I'd like to ask is, first of all, where did all of you get your start and affinity for bad games? And we heard, I'll start with Mike, and then we'll kind of go around the horn here. Mike, when did you even know they were bad games when you started enjoying some of these games?
I think I started becoming more of a bad game enjoyer, thanks to Awful Block in general. There was also this bad game exchange on Speed Demo's archive.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that I knew the bad game that I was receiving, which was Subterranea. And I gave, and on the other end, I gave Vorpal, who never completed a run of the game, Hokuto no Ken for the NES.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And
good.
And I think I just kind of gained an appreciation over the years, just playing starting with that and Lagoon, and then just playing, just kind of seeking out more and more weird and obscure games after that, because I do like playing cult classic games and stuff like that, and kind of it's not quite the same thing, but it has a bit of a similar feel.
Bro, how about you? What's your history with the awful games?
What's my history with the awful games? I was going to say, my nose is itching like crazy right now in front of everybody, and I can't do anything about it because it would be embarrassing. My history of awful games, I played quite a few bad games when I was growing up, which people have found out. But really, when it came to speed running, again, the blame goes to PJ. Because I had done my first GDQ run, which was Mirror's Edge. It went okay, and then I found out about this bad game exchange, signed up. Dragon Dark gave me Athena, and I gave him Wizard of Oz. And let me just say, I'm still waiting for Dragon Dark to finish that run, because how long has it been? What, 9-10 years?
I think 10 years at this point.
Yeah. So at that point, I started playing some of those awful games just because I agreed to. And I hate Athena, but then after that run was finally done for the Speed Demos Archive website, I was like, I got to find a new project. You think you're done and then you're not. That's the problem with bad games.
It just keeps snowballing.
And now he runs a bad games tournament, so it's only gotten worse.
Oh, yeah, we find a lot of, I was going to say gold, but the opposite of that. Whatever the opposite of gold is. Like tin. A lot of tin games out there, yeah.
Liz, what is kind of your first experience with what you might consider a bad game?
I'm a lot different from everyone else here because I'm the new kid on the block. I've only been doing this for the past 4 years and not a million. And
wow,
damn,
I'm the young hip kid. No, extremely not. But it just kind of. I've always been a very silly, goofy person, and I fell into this in the weirdest way, because my first bad game was a game called The Ooze, which I ran on a dare because someone bet me that I couldn't play it for more than 15 minutes. So I routed it and speed ran it for months, and then I just kind of realized I really, really liked playing garbage, and I then started doing the same thing for you know what? I'm going to learn how to speedrun Mega Man DOS. And then it was actually really fun. And I just kind of dove deeper and deeper. And now I live in a trash can and everything's great.
And honestly, it sounds like one game becomes this gateway to this whole world.
It does, yeah.
For almost everyone. Yeah. PJ, did you have a similar experience once you had gone down the rabbit hole of Lagoon? Now you want to try this, now you want to try that. What's your history?
I don't really know that I like bad games. Just that sometimes there's a game that just has one really big flaw that makes it just awful to play, but also makes it really interesting. So there might be a game that just has absolutely terrible controls, and then it becomes a personal challenge to try and make the controls work. And it's not really anything about the game being bad that I care about. It's more just right. I need to see if it's possible to make this game function. So there's that, and then some of my projects have just kind of developed because I'm really stubborn, and sometimes I accept bets and dares from other people who I sometimes call friends because I don't know any better, and then I get trapped into running games.
Happens to us all.
That's kind of how it works for me.
bro, I think that's really you might at this point have some of the most experience, you and Mike, with all of these different types of game. What hooks you in? What keeps you trying a game then again? If it is considered bad by other folks.
Yeah. I was thinking the thing that makes an interesting bad video game is usually something that has some sort of redemption. The worst pit for video games, probably the ones that are going to be forgotten in history, are those that are much more mediocre. But take, for example, some of the games that I'm taking a look. Lawnmower Man, PJ, you ran that. I believe that's one of the first bad games that I saw on GDQ. And let me just say, just the first-person auto-scroller with the weird floaty hands, it should not exist, okay? Yeah. Absolutely should not exist, but it does exist, incredible. And it's fascinating. The thing is, it doesn't hold back, and oftentimes the devs explore something that no other dev did. If they would have been successful, it could have become a new genre or a new, trope that shows up in video games, but the games fail so bad that oftentimes those are just forgotten to history.
Right. That's such a good point. This keeps coming up in the chat, and I want to ask about it because this kind of goes along with that. How do you end up discovering some of these things? Because you're right, these things unfortunately do get lost. So how do we keep them alive? How do we discover some of these games that got written off, weren't popular, didn't sell a lot of copies, those kind of things? Well,
I think that. Luckily, I've got a good community of people around me who hunt for bad video games all the time with the tournament that I help with, Cusa Grande. But also, I think back to games that I played as a kid. Simply put, I'm not going to be running Lagoon. It just doesn't appeal to me, PJ. And I'm not sure it appeals to you either, but, it's not going to be one that I play. The thing is, like Atari, Nintendo, those are systems that I really enjoy going and finding things from my childhood. And every once in a while, I stumble across something that I'm like, nobody has heard of this. And I played it, and it's really bad. And I got to bring that back and subject somebody else to the pain that I experienced as a kid, I just have a whole bunch of these old games that oftentimes were released in magazines that people would just go home and type in the basic code and save it to a floppy disk. That's how a lot of these games that I really enjoy discovering existed. Things that were shared one person with another, and there's some really cool ideas even back for the Atari that have never shown up in recent games again, and it just rediscovering that and making other people play it is my thing.
So this just got mentioned in chat too. I think it's an interesting point that many of us were born in the era of rental. You go to rent a video game, and that was your game for the weekend. That's a way that you could have to discover games as well.
Well, one of those was Rocky and Bullwinkle NES for me. We took it back early to we rented it from Radio Shack. Okay, first off, our Radio Shack rented games out to people. I took it back early and switched it for Final Fantasy VI, which our parents told us to stop renting so much. No, Rocky and Bullwinkle is broken.
Mike or PJ, do you have similar experience? I mean, let me go to PJ actually, because you mentioned doing a game exchange on SDA. Was that a common way that you would discover games and things like that back before there was kind of the popularity of speedrunning that we have nowadays?
No, I wouldn't say that was common. Okay. I started that mostly as a community building thing.
Oh, cool.
You would just randomly pair up with someone. I think I tried to match them up by genres. So if there were two people that were really interested in platformers, you would pair up and then force each other to speedrun a platformer game of your choice. And one of the catches there was that you were forced to verify the run then on SDA. So if they were gonna have to speedrun it, you were gonna have to make sure that it actually gets accepted and didn't just get stuck in verification limbo on SDA. So that was more a community building exercise than a game discovery exercise, I would say.
Yeah, because at most, people would discover one game.
Yeah,
Well,
but then
it-
you heard about all the other games that other people had to play, Mike, you know?
That is true.
Everybody had like this weird birth experience into the bad game community. And PJ's our mother.
What?
wow.
So you all better take care of me when I'm old.
Oh, we'll take care of you.
I mean, Liz is the young hip kid, so she's going to be the one taking
No.
care of all of us.
No.
So
Y'all
true.
are going in a home.
But that actually brings up a really so nowadays one of the more popular things or fun things to do is send your friend a troll level or send your thing. This was like the original way to troll your friends was to give them a speed run that might have been off the wall or bonkers.
Yep.
So what a fun way to kind of this is kind of the beginning of that. I could see it happening here. Mike, I got a question for you. As Awful
sure.
Block becomes a thing and everything, were games evaluated and chosen the same way that they were? Or did you have to create any sort of new processes or anything like that? Because there had to have been games that people might not have been familiar with.
Yeah, well, it's definitely there's some similarities and there's some differences. Like there's some games that are very infamous for being bad, like Superman 64. But one of the reasons why we didn't have Superman 64 for so long is that there are all of these ring levels that you have to fly through, and they are just so boring and so bad. And there's like over an hour of them that if we showed them off, everyone would be like, ha ha, Superman 64. And then, about half an hour and people will be like, stop it with the rings. So, but when it turns out that there's actually like a difficulty that cuts out like all of the ring levels, then that made it like a much more enjoyable and watchable experience. So I would say the difference is that since, some of these games, like, even if they're really bad, they're not like infamous or well known. I would say more so than a lot of like the other, categories or genres that we look through, that like we really have to look through like every single game for at least, a minute or two just to like see what the game looks like and, how it plays in a speed run, because you're just not going to be familiar with it like you are with like a Mario or a Zelda or a first-person shooter. It's just not. You're just not going to have that same familiarity level with it. So it's actually one of the longer, I guess, quote unquote, categories to go through, because like you really just have to look through all the games. I will say this, that there's an event usually around like August or September of every year called the Big Bad Game-a-thon, which I have participated in. No shocker there. That is actually really helpful for me and the other people in the Awful Games community, because it just helps us like, look through all, because a lot of the games for Big Bad Game-a-thon are also submitted to Awful Games. So it just helps us look like, kind of have like a sneak peek of like, of what we could have and like, what worked for Big Bad Game-a-thon and what did it. That's definitely a very helpful marathon for helping us judge the Awful game. So if I had to, like say there's a big difference, I would say like there's really like an aesthetic that you want, that you want the game to have, and it's not necessarily like the sharpest, cleanest graphics. It's more like, does this look funny or does this look jank? It's just like, is this like eye-catching, but not necessarily because like, wow, it's, it looks so amazing, or, the graphics look so colorful. It's like, does it like catch your eye in any other way that like you wouldn't expect?
Mohawk and headphone jack.
That's actually a large reason why we have it at that specific time, Mike, when we were discussing the dates to have Big Bad Game-a-thon, because we were like, if we do it right before GDQ submissions open, bam, you have a submission video, wink, wink.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I guess it worked. Hey, well, somewhat.
Perfect.
It somewhat
Yeah.
worked. Yeah.
Perfect timing. One of the things that all of you share here on this panel is you've all been on the couch, you've all hosted, you've all ran, you've done all these things that are different aspects and different avenues of this. And it's kind of fun because most of the games I've noticed nowadays at Awful Block, they become these presentations. You want to have a good time. You want to put on a show. It's late at night, so you're already got that thing going for you back when we were in person. So I am curious if there's any difference in preparation when you're doing this. And Bro, I'll start with you. We'll kind of go around the horn here. Is there any preparation differences when you're running a game or when you're commentating a game? Take it a little behind the scenes there and give us some insight.
Oh, geez. When running a game, I'm really trying to think. It very much depends on the game. One of the runs that I did, Town with No Name, for example, that is a game that honestly has like no difficulty. So I was thinking, honestly, when I was getting ready for it, I was like, when do I need to pause so that people can hear the important lines? I needed to help people understand. And the thing is, like, nobody agreed to commentate with me. And so I was going to be there alone. I just yelled at the audience, hey, as many of you who want to come and sit on the couch, come on up. We got like 20 people there. And honestly, just having that kind of friendship, people just sitting there laughing, they could barely see the game, but they were laughing. It added a lot of flavor to it. For runs that actually require having attention, though, I try to coordinate with somebody else and like at least have them watch the run, but usually not too much so that they can laugh when weird things happen.
Liz, what has your prep been like for some of the games you've run?
My what? My prep?
Your prep, yeah. I mean, is there any different approach to, commentating as opposed to like running the game itself?
No, I kind of just, I don't know, I focus a lot on just goofing off. Like, if I go into something too serious, then it'll start to like make me nervous. So I just kind of go in like, I'm gonna have a good time and I'm gonna hang out with my friends, usually off, and we're just going to laugh at this video game. And it really does help like get the edge off.
PJ, we've heard of some of your approach. Does it change at all if you're sitting on the couch versus if you're actually playing the game?
I think sometimes sitting on the couch is more stressful than running it.
Yeah,
because it's really tough to know when the runner needs to focus. This is just like in general. It's really tough to know when the runner needs to focus and when you can interject with commentary. When it's okay to joke versus when the runner needs to absolutely not be laughing. And for some of the awful games, I mean, a lot of my friends have run these. So I want to be on the couch to support them, but I also absolutely don't want to play through Cruel World or Time Cop.
Yeah.
So then I have to figure out how I'm going to sit on the couch and try and make it, try and disguise the fact that I know nothing about these games while still supporting the runners.
Well, I mean, if you can laugh about things and sometimes just have a good line or two, and make fun of the game a little bit, I don't know. You're improvising, PJ, and honestly, It's just fun to chill with friends and laugh.
Yep, I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Mike, anything for you? You've now run the gamut of participating in different types of ways in the Awful Block. Any change for you, or are you just up there having a good time?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely different from like running a quote unquote normal game because like, part of the appeal is just like goofing off and just, not taking it too seriously. And so like, even if like you have a run fail, you kind of have, kind of the backup defense of like, oh, well, it's a bad game. So that's why I died. Whatever, So like, I generally don't feel too nervous running an awful game, and I just try to make sure that I have a good couch commentary that gels well together, and like who are also like having a good time.
Well, speaking of that couldn't be more of a perfect transition. We're going to take a look at our first run today, folks. And there are a few runs we're going to get to. Unfortunately, we just don't have time to get to all of the wonderful moments that have happened. But the first one we're going to look at is from GDQ 2019, Avoid the Noid, as run by Mike Uyama. And Mike, first of all, how did this game come? Like, how did you end up playing Avoid the Noid, and why did you think this would be great for the for the awful block?
Okay, so speaking of Brosentia's bad game tournament, for Cuso Grande, there was one of the GMs, Tina, gave out this game, and I wasn't actually technically a competitor for this. There's this thing called a zombie, which is someone who kind of just fills up the last screen just so that, all of the race screens are filled. So like I had no stakes in this. And I was one of the people playing this game. And this game just made me, it didn't really make me angry, full of rage, but it definitely like trolled me relentlessly and made me and just like had me yelling at the game because it was just so ridiculous, like how obtuse the game is. The control scheme is one of those very innovative control schemes that is like has never been repeated again because it's really bad, and that's why no one has repeated it. So like you might see me jumping when it doesn't look like there's a point to it. There's hidden pits. Like none of the pits in this game are visible, so I'm actually jumping over hidden pits if I'm not dodging noids. There's also phones that I'm skipping, but you have to, pick up some of the phones because some of the phones have keys in them because that's how pizza delivery works, I guess, or how it worked back in the 80s. But if you pick up the wrong phones, then somehow a Noid blows you up via telephone and you lose a life. So like, there's just this combination of factors, and that like the frame rate and the EGA graphics and stuff that gives the same kind of like a janky charm, so you will. So like after I played the game, I think like a month or two after, like this was Big Bad Gameathon actually, and I was like, I want to submit this game for Big Bad Gameathon, so I decided to learn it for Big Bad Gameathon. And I submitted it, and it got in, and that's kind of it just went from there.
Bro, have you played this before? I noticed. I think I see you there on the couch.
Okay, so I was sitting on the couch, and Mike was like, "No, at the end, we're gonna make you play a little bit so that you can feel what it's like." And I hadn't before. The best explanation that I have for this game is that it controls a little bit like King's Quest, like the original, because you push left, you start walking, and then you have to like press left again to stop walking.
No, you press left again to like walk further left. Like it's like an inertia system. It's like
I don't know. It made no sense.
It doesn't make sense. Okay, so let me explain how the movement works. So basically, when you press a direction, you just walk in that direction constantly. Like let's say you tap right, you just keep on walking. And if you tap right again, then you start running in that direction. And then like to stop, I would have to press the opposite direction twice. And then like I would come to a complete standstill. And also whether like how fast you are running or walking or stopped also determines how far you roll or jump. And so like if I need to like turn around to like go back inside a door, because that's like the only time you're like invulnerable, noids can't hit you somehow. Then I would have, and if I'm from a run, then I would have to tap the opposite direction 4 times to make sure I'm like hightailing it in the other direction. So yeah, this is what I mean by like the controls are very innovative, but not in a good way, and it's never really been replicated since. Because like, why would you try to replicate this control scheme?
There's a reason.
Yeah,
it's a little similar to Karnov for DOS, so maybe it's just like a DOS thing where they're just like, let's have these controls and try a new thing and make it be terrible.
I've got a CD of DOS Karnov somewhere. Darsnov. I don't know where it is. I'll leave it. I won't look.
I love that game.
Yeah, and
we're gonna be okay.
Oh, and the thing about this game, when you run it, there's just a ton of RNG. Like times can vary wildly. When I was actively playing this game, my PB, and I guess the record, because I'm the only one who's played it, was 6 minutes. But like when I was like practicing this game, my times would vary anywhere from like 6.5 minutes to like 10 minutes, just because of like how many noids I had to avoid, and like whether they're in good spots. And what you just saw there was a Noid Avoider. You have a limited supply of them, And you really want to use them when absolutely necessary and when it'll definitely like clear a screen for you, because once you're out, you're just out, and then there's nothing you can do about Noid RNG then. And what the Noid Avoider does is that it just deletes all the Noids and all the projectiles they have thrown on screen. In fact, about this run, it actually goes really well for the first 30 floors, aka the building. And then I actually make a really big mistake for the end of the run when I'm on the rooftop. And I even say it out loud. I was like, oops, I shouldn't have done that. And the thing is, like on the rooftop, I had one more Noid Avoider to secure the last key, and the keys just teleport randomly everywhere. They don't like stay in one place for very long. So like, like your time spent on the rooftop can be anywhere from like 20 seconds to just 3+ minutes, depending on like what your RNG is. And I remember I used a Noid Avoider, and when you're on the rooftop and you still have a key left, you want to use your Noid Avoiders not to necessarily survive, but to secure a key. Like, it's better to die, and as long as you have a spare life, to like not use a Noid Avoider. So like you can use it to secure a key rather than to just try to live using a Noid Avoider. And in the run, and you're about to get to the rooftop section, like for my last key, I used my last Noid Avoider to survive, and I was like, oops. And like, so the run went from like very good pace to like, now I'm at the mercy of this game's RNG. As you can see, like I collect the first key very fast, and like I'm not struggling too much, but then like I get to the rooftop in about 6 minutes, and then like I don't finish the game until like 9:15 or so. And that's still a good run, but it's like, I'm just like struggling to like get the key, because like, if the water balloons hit you, that's just as bad as, getting hit by a bazooka, because, no one wants soggy pizza.
We're going to be getting to Mega Man DOS a little bit later in the show today, but there's this charm about DOS games and their control and their presentation and everything that on glance they may not be the game that you think of when you think of games that you from your childhood and stuff, but there is still something very charming about. Maybe it's the graphics, I don't know, but there's something about this that I'm curious if any of you have had that experience with it.
Yeah, I mean, I actually grew up with DOS games, not this one in particular, but like I did grew up with both like a Tandy that only had CGA and then like a 4086 after that, and with its super VGA and it's whopping 33 megahertz and turbo button. And yeah, this is the part where I'm at the mercy of the game's RNG, because I'm out of Noid Avoiders, and I have plenty of lives, but lives kind of don't matter because, like, as you can see, like, I'm just trapped. Like, I can't do anything. So that's why you want to spare the Noid Avoiders for securing the keys. And there's, oh no, the full frontal Noidity with the Noid laughing at you. But really, like, kind of the charm of DOS games is that like it was basically the Wild West of gaming, even more so than Nintendo. Because like even with Nintendo games, even though there's plenty of games that are of a certain quality, there was the Nintendo seal of quality. So the games at least had to be completable and tested a little bit and stuff like that. But DOS games, there's like no DOS seal of quality. So like the games could be all over the place. They were trying all sorts of different things. Like, before, like Doom, before Doom, like really standardized like first person shooter controls, like you had like all sorts of keyboard setups, and like it's not uncommon for a DOS game to have like 20 different keys to control your character, because like there's so many different functions in the game. So it's like A for attack and like D for duck and like, stuff like that. It's just like, why are you doing this to me?
Should have become a doctor, Mike.
I know.
That's what the game's telling you.
Liz,
I still wonder if any doctors play this game. They're like, I am a doctor. I'm trying to play this game to have some fun, and I'm not.
Liz, you kind of alluded to it earlier, but what is it about DOS games? I mean, there's just something, that makes us all keep coming back to them, and I sometimes wonder what that is.
I mean, as I said before, Wild West, you get a lot of variety with DOS games. And like, sometimes it really, hits the spot, games like, Doom, System Shock, classics of the era, like, the Might and Magic games, stuff like that. There's stuff that's still fondly remembered, and there's stuff that's fondly remembered somewhat, like Wizardry, but has not aged particularly well.
Right.
Like, I have not played much Wizardry, but like from everyone who describes it to me, it's like you're going to die a lot, and save and load frequently, and make sure you make multiple saves so you don't like save screw yourself like with a bad save, stuff like that. It's like very much like how games worked at the time, because there's no real standard for a lot of these games. So as much as like game design has improved over the years, there's kind of an appeal to like developers figuring out how games worked back in the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I think along with that, with a lot of the games that we've been going and looking at, most of the games that you have on NES, you're going to find that they're from Japan, they're from the US, and maybe a handful of them are from Europe, which, they have their own degrees of quality. Here with DOS, though, we saw a whole spectrum from DOS Ninja Gaiden to some Korean video games, Mino's Adventure, for example. We had some... We had an Israeli-based, what was it?
Beasts of Horror. It was like a one-on-one fighter.
Yeah. There was also a puzzle game that was kind of cool. We've had multiple yogurt video games, which, I mean, you've got so many things all over the place, and some of them actually do aim to a little bit of an older audience as well, whereas Nintendo usually had a specific audience. I don't know. Yeah, it's just the Wild West, and we get to explore cultures that honestly we never really explore in video games.
All right. Sorry to interrupt you, bro, but this is you like struggling with the game's controls and showing off the donation set to see what happens when you pick up a wrong phone. And that's what happens when you pick up a wrong phone. And that's why you have to memorize every single phone in the game, because if you don't, then you just die picking up the wrong phone. So the game's just like very unforgiving and very trolling. It's kind of how they added replay value back in the day by just, making it overly difficult and, obtuse. Like that. And if you were looking closely at Bro playing the game, like he was, struggling a bit more with the controls, because like the controls definitely have a learning curve. Like I remember someone like actually like tried playing the game afterward, and they said, you made the game look a lot more playable than it really is.
That's one of the weird things about bad games. Yeah, usually when they're played, well, not always, but a lot of the times when they're played well, if you haven't played it yourself, you won't fully grasp
exactly.
a lot of what's bad. And because of that, I think for marathons and such, just because the game is difficult for you doesn't mean it's going to be standing out. There are other things to look at when it comes to selection.
Well, a fun run. I remember watching it live, and it seemed like everyone was having a good time, regardless of what, the controls and all of that fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. I had a lot of fun, and my couch had a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely a memorable one, Mike. And I think that leads us kind of, speaking of memorable, I think when I ask people about, Awful Block and what are some of their favorite memories, this is the game that probably gets mentioned the most, and that is Virtual Highlight. And it, the run I'm showing here is from AGDQ 2019. And I first of all, obviously we're not going to show the whole thing. It goes on for quite a while. But I guess where do we start is Mike, had you ever even heard of this game when you saw it submitted? Or what was your experience? What's the history a little bit here of Virtual Highlight?
I had definitely heard of it before. I think I remember even being reviewed back in the day and it getting like kind of okay.
Wow.
I don't think it. I think it became really more infamous when the angry video game nerd, Pro Jared, did YouTube videos.
I think AVGN did this game after the GDQ run, actually.
I think. You might be right. Yeah.
You made it popular, Mike.
Yeah,
that is true. It's one of the more watched awful games runs. Actually, like it definitely has hundreds of thousands of views on the GDQ channel. It is a very watched. And like what just makes the game like so quote unquote appealing is that the frame rate is just so atrocious. Like it's just so bad.
There's already a smattering of
there's
per
a
second
combination
in the
of
chat.
factors. It's been widely theorized, and I think this is true because when you look at the games, they have kind of a similar aesthetic. Is that this game actually uses a golfing game engine? I think it's like
I love that.
Waikiki Golf or something like that. I think it's like some Hawaiian golf course game for the Saturn. It's also released. It's released by the same company, T&E Soft. So you will be able to look it up. And and it also runs at a similarly poor frame rate. It also helps that like the main character is like digitized, where like there's a lot of polygons and stuff. So it kind of like it just looks out of place. So it's like this mix of like when like so for context, like people thought the next big thing in games was going to be full motion video. So, like digitizing sprites like, Mortal Kombat,
Realistic.
Yeah, Myst, with its like videos and stuff. Yeah, it's realistic. So like, let's have this quote unquote realistic sprite, and then like let's have it with 3D polygons, which was also considered the next big thing. So like they mashed them together, and it just creates this like really jarring like kind of repulsive look, honestly. But when I said like awful games have to be eye-catching, this is kind of what I mean. Like, it's not eye-catching because it looks so good. It's eye-catching because it just looks so out of place and like bad.
The strange thing about this, I know that you were talking about Superman 64 and how the ring section feels really, really repetitive. This game isn't exactly short, but at the same time, every area that you go to, there's something new happening in the speedrun, and that's what keeps it from going stale over this time. It's exciting. It's fun. You don't know what's going to happen next as a new viewer. I was sitting way, way far back in the audience here watching this, and I'd never actually watched the run myself before, but it just kept evolving as it went on.
Yeah, it's like, that's the funny thing is it's just like this game somehow one-ups itself in its badness. Like now you have this, I think it's like the fairy. Yeah, you get this fairy armor in this game, which is like a slightly shinier version of like this metal armor that you have, which already looks like it's made of like cheap tin or aluminum.
It's so good.
And then like you get to, and then like when you have to make a turn that's like 90 degrees or more, you want to go in the map screen because the game actually runs at like 30 or 60 FPS in the map screen. So like it's quicker to like actually stop your character, turn in the map screen, and then start running there just because it takes so long to turn otherwise.
And the thing is, sometimes there's a big gap between you doing that once and then the next time. And so people halfway forget about this mechanic. Then suddenly they see the map pop up again and they're like, oh yeah, this game's bad.
Yeah, and it's really funny because like sometimes, like when it comes to like, CD console emulation, like sometimes they'll like the emulation will be inaccurate because there's like graphical glitches or, some spot will freeze because like, it doesn't perfectly emulate hardware. But in this game, I saw someone play it on emulator, and it ran too well. Like it
ran
looked
too well. It was playable.
It was like it looked too playable. Like it actually kind of runs at like 20 or 30 frames per second on emulators. Like that's not the virtual light I know.
Yeah, it was actually pretty fun, and like you could tell what you were doing, and you could somewhat respond to things. It was still bad, but it's so much worse on hardware. This is the only way to experience what it was really like.
I have this window tiny and it's still giving me motion sick.
Oh no.
I'm sorry, Liz.
I get motion sick I was in the crowd and I had to look away a lot.
Yeah,
I mean,
understandable, especially later on in the game with like the mine carts and
I actually played this game for the first time last week, by the way, for 5 minutes. People begged me to. It was great.
So 5 minutes you weren't ready to throw it out the window after 5 minutes.
No, but I was ready to lie down feeling sick for an hour. Like a lot of games with bad games, it does have to be eye-catching, like we said, and this is the most eye-catching thing. Like a lot of them, you sit down, kind of got to see exactly why it's bad. This, you immediately can tell why it's bad. It physically assaults you with how bad it is.
Yeah.
Mike, had you played it before? Because you're doing the commentary for part of this, and I was curious if you had you done the speed run? Like, were there many people speedrunning this game?
I haven't actually played this game before, but I did watch the one at RPG Limit Break, so I was kind of familiar with the game and the run at this point, and it was actually a pretty big hit at RPG Limit Break too.
Oh yeah.
Like a lot of people like really enjoyed the run. People in chat were enjoying it. And, Dyer does a good job of commentating it because, like, he's not really, like, a goofy commentator, but, like, he also doesn't take the game overly seriously. Like, he definitely, like, he's definitely informative and, goes over the game, but he's not, like, pouring over, like, every single technical detail or something like that. And he gives time to, like, show off the goofier aspect, like how you touch all the orbs and the vampires later and stuff like that.
Yeah, the thing is, Jair puts no act on for this. He's exactly himself, and it works extremely well commentary-wise that, he does know a lot of technical details behind it, but if he talks about any of it, just gives a very shortened version, because guess what? Most of the people watching this just want to vomit and don't really care too much about the most intricate details, Instead, they're there for the highlights of the highlight.
Yeah. I remember I asked Jair, like, during the fire cave, which runs worse than the overworld, by the way. It runs at, like, maybe half of this frame rate.
Yeah.
Like, probably legit frames per second.
Yeah.
No, seconds per frame, I mean. And, so I remember asking him something like, is it easier to do frame perfect tricks in this game because you have so long to perform them? And he's like, I would dare say that this entire run is frame perfect so far.
One thing I do want to comment on is that this is a Sega Saturn game, and the Sega Saturn actually has some really wonderful games to its library.
Oh, yeah.
But this might have, I don't know if there had been any Saturn games showcased before at a GDQ, because this is my first time noticing. There have been. Okay, there were some leading up to this.
Not too many. Like, the Saturn, especially outside of Japan, is not the most popular system. But, it does have some gems here and there that we have showcased.
Yeah. Wait, Liz, did you run Mr. Bones at a GDQ?
I did run Mr. Bones this year.
Because that was on Saturn.
Yep.
Yep. That was Saturn. What?
And then the head designer or producer, Ed Annunziata, had like an AMA on Twitter about Mr. Bones.
Yep,
like,
I love that. That made me so happy.
That is so cool. Let's see. So, I know to make something like this happen, I'm always, was there any did tech have to do anything different or special to get a console that, doesn't normally get played at GDQ to make this run actually happen?
We actually have a Saturn RGB cable.
Wow.
We actually had the technology for this. We didn't have to do anything special for it. It wasn't a situation like Gordo 106, which is on the Lynx, which like no one has, and like and it's like, why would we ever get, why would he ever try to capture that? Because like, who has the Lynx? It's like, oops, we accepted the one Lynx game because it's really funny and bad. and so the runner actually had like a fellow Dutchman give him like the technology to be able to have the Lynx be captured.
I love it. Just had to pass along the technology, probably contacting aliens.
That's a common thing too, because like I have a WonderSwan game that I've wanted to run, but like there's absolutely no way to capture the WonderSwan. There's a lot of really great gems that are hidden away behind ways that we can't capture them. So
yeah, Game Boy Color was a little bit of a struggle, but luckily, after buying way too many things, for one speed run live, I was able to get it working. But there's so many that if I submit things every now and then that I'm like, if it gets submitted, I'm going to be spending a whole bunch of money trying to figure out how to get this streaming.
I've mentioned quite often how traditionally the awful block happens late at night and things like that. I live in California, so it's usually prime time for me when I get to watch the stream and see this. Unfortunately, I'm usually only able to go to SGDQ. Bro, you mentioned you were in the crowd with Liz and things like that. We had so much fun watching this live on stream. Were you out there in the crowd having the same type of experience? Because I had never even heard of this game until I saw it at a GDQ. So I'm curious if the vibe in the crowd was similar.
Sort of. I believe I was on a beanbag and Liz was right next to me in the back. If you don't remember that, Liz, I don't know why I do. But, simply put, there was some sort of joy to sit in the back and just listen to all of the laughter and not feel like I had to put on a presentation or be in front of a camera. Because I don't know, there's a huge difference between doing commentary and just being there to savor it and enjoy it. And seriously, this was such a comfy run for me to just eat up. I didn't know the run. Right. I didn't feel like I had to worry about things going on, and it still kept fun. I don't know. I just loved it.
Mike,
Bad Games Block is also... Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go for it. This was great. Go for it.
Bad Games Block is also just it's a lot of people's favorite parts of the night. It's a very exciting, fun time. And so at the start of that time, it was crowds were just packed. And everyone really tries to stay up, which is incredibly antithetical to why it originally existed, which is funny to me.
I kind of started falling asleep during this. I'm not going to lie, but it's because I was so comfy.
Yeah. I think I went to bed immediately after Mohawk and Headphone Jack because not only did I feel sick, but also I was very tired. It was really late.
Yeah, Mohawk and Headphone Jack is one of the few 2D games that legitimately needs sickness warning.
Brandish could contest it too.
Oh,
Jim Power.
Brandish. Oh no. So imagine the opposite of turning this game. It's just instant, and there's no transition for it, and it's 2D. It just completely flips the perspective instantly when you turn.
Yeah,
and
one frame
it
turn
is just incredibly jarring, and
your character is always facing up, but the whole dungeon rotates around you.
Yeah.
What's it for?
The Super Nintendo.
Oh, of course.
PJ, have you speedrun it or played it through it?
Yeah, I speedran it. I submitted it to a GDQ some number of years ago, but that's another game that's borderline unwatchable if you've never played it, and completely impossible. So it's not a great submission choice.
But there's going to be people like Brossentia and Lizstar out there who are just going to have this affinity for it. So it seems like...
Lizstar does have motion sickness issues, so I think that would be the worst game for her to run.
Hoshiwo Mirohito, nobody was able to understand what was going on there when Wolf ran that, I think, at GDQX, and it was still an amazing experience because, you can see how broken it is. Yeah, you don't know why he's moonwalking through walls or exactly how it's done, but that's okay. It's okay because you still... part of it is that, we're also putting on some sort of comedic show. I'd say that we're more the jesters of speedrunning than anything else. Not clowns, because clowns are gross and dumb. But yeah, definitely jester side of things, that we're here to laugh and just usually have a good time. And if it means slowing down occasionally to explain or show something specific off, that's part of the show.
It's all part of the show.
Yeah.
So I do want to say something about just the Highlight series in general.
Please.
It's actually pretty... I don't know about nowadays, but back in the day, it was pretty well regarded in Japan. In fact, it was one of the first action RPGs on Japanese PCs. I think it came out... The original Highlight came out in 1984 on Japanese.
Oh, wow.
Now, the original Highlight didn't come out until 1989 or 1990 in the US. So it was horrifically dated by the time it came out, especially with 2 Zelda games and everything. So Highlight has a reputation for being total trash in the US, but in Japan, it's known for being a fairly big deal and one of the big, RPGs that
genre
really started off the genre, Ultima and Wizardry and And like Hydlide 3, aka Super Hydlide, like when it was released in Japanese PCs, back in 1987, it was like they're like very big, like there was this world that you could explore and everything. Like it's very ambitious for its time. So like it sold really well on Japanese PCs, but like when it came out on the Genesis, ugliest looking Genesis game, use it for a NES game.
Well, it was made, many years before, so that's understandable. Even Virtual Hydlite is trying a lot of new things that I don't think were really explored in 3D.
Yeah.
At this specific time. 95. Sorry, I gotta do a little searching.
It is
here.
the last Hydlite game.
For good reason. I mean, look at this fairy armor. It's shoulder pads.
I mean, Atlas stuck with the Shin Megami Tensei instead of the Hydlite games. Yes, they actually published this, at least in the US. So I think they probably made the right choice sticking with, Shin Megami Tensei and Persona. Just throwing that out there.
Mike, I gotta ask you at least one more question, and that is, rewatching this. I hadn't watched this since the original live stream of it, and Jair does the run's actually surprisingly seamless. Like there doesn't seem like there's any big, we might consider a mistake or anything. The whole thing seems to really come together well, considering how the game looks just flat out broken with the frame rate and everything. Was there anything that happened that wasn't supposed to, or maybe some things that didn't go exactly as planned that you can remember?
So what's funny about this game is that like, it even advertised in the back of the box, like there's a billion like different worlds and stuff like that, which just means there's like a lot of different random seeds you can have. And Jair picks a seed that's like the fastest seed. So that's what makes this run more consistent. And also you say that right as he's going into that frame rate horror cave, fire cave that I was mentioning. And like, as you can see, like no matter how good you are at this game, you just are going to struggle to like maneuver through the cave because it just look, if you can. I understand if you can't because it's really hard to honestly but it's like it's pretty hard to like properly make the turns and everything without bonking into walls.
So good.
There's not even, it's tough to even acknowledge a clear path to go somewhere, what we're seeing on screen right now. Is he doing the same thing by going into the map again to save the time, or is he actually trying to orientate himself?
Both.
Both. Like
okay.
you because the frame rate's naturally pretty bad, but like in this cave, it's like even more important that you go into the map to turn.
It's such a mess. Oh, I love this part. Oh.
I do have to say, this is so good.
I'll keep going.
No. I was just going to comment one more time, that the whole atmosphere of Awful Block being there live, for those of you that have never had a chance to attend a live event, AGDQ 2020 was the first time I got to go to an AGDQ. So my first time seeing an Awful Block live. And it's almost exactly as Bro and Liz are describing, where it's at this point of the night, it's really a fun hang. It's everyone having a good time, and you can even hear the crowd sometimes over. They haven't mic'd actually for the more current events and everything. Last time we were live, and so getting a chance to like experience that and seeing it all works really well for a game such as this. Where what is going on right now?
I'd also say that the timing that I still believe that this would be a good block to have during the day sometime, just to scare all the people who are usually asleep. Prime time. We need to have one prime time Awful Block. Just one, see how it is. And then you can have the hoops for Superman 64 for like $100,000 donation bid for that. You see, Mike, and you'll meet it. But there is a comfy nature. I'm just not able to stay awake that long anymore. I get exhausted. And by the end of Awful Block, which is usually when my run is, I'm delusional. I can't really focus on the game that I'm playing, and I have no idea how I actually play it. So I guess there's a little less guilt for me, because I'm like, well, if everything goes terrible, I'm blaming it on Mike giving me the worst slot possible. Thank you, Mike.
All Mike.
I mean, there are there are people who like wish for like a prime time awful block, but at the same time, there's also kind of like this manic energy that comes from being like up all night at like 4 a.m. And I remember that because HDQ 2020 we were running late, like 3 hours late at that point, and like my super highlight run was originally supposed to be like 1 a.m. and I'm like, this is good, and it's like then it was like past 4 a.m. and I was like.
Yeah, I remember.
I was so
God, what year? It might have been
so
2014.
bad.
Go ahead, PJ,
2014.
you go first. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Say again.
Yeah, PJ, you go ahead and go first.
Okay. It was either 2013 or 2014. Whatever year I was running Spider-Man and the X-Men and Arcade's Revenge.
Oh no!
And that was originally scheduled for like 5:30 or 6 a.m. and eventually got pushed to 11:30 a.m. So the moderately late stay up through the night run became, oh no, now it's too late to go to bed.
One thing
Guess we gotta stay up and do this run.
Though, is that awful block out of all of the blocks out there is probably most consistent at making up time.
Right.
Very true.
Yeah, that is true.
Just saying. We're there for you, Mike.
Well, and with that in mind, Mike, is there anything we're missing in this run before we move on? Because there's so much fun. I really do recommend. If you haven't yet, I'm imagining most people who are watching this today have probly seen this run. But
I mean, there's a
else?
part in the end game that's like kind of horrifying in how like elaborate it is. But I mean, we got the fire cave, which is really the best part.
I mean, the minecart is the best part.
Oh, the minecart! I forgot about the minecart. Yeah,
like,
so
even if you need to fast forward a little bit to show off the minecart, that would be fine.
I'm fast forwarding a little bit. I can't remember where exactly that is in the run.
I don't remember where it is. Unfortunately.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, there it is.
Perfect timing.
Oh God!
Here you go.
Yeah, sorry.
Liz,
you should look away, Liz. This is
Look
not.
away,
Still looks better than the FF6 minecart.
Shade.
A little bit, yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, it's magical, folks. It's just absolutely it.
I think I laughed this entire time. It was amazing.
Mike, at this point, do you have control of the character during the minecart, or is this something where you're on the ride?
I think you're just on the ride.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember Gyre struggling to get inside the minecart sometimes, even though it looked like he would it looked like he would get in the minecart, but then he'd just be on top of the minecart, and then he had to like shuffle his character around a little bit to actually like ride the minecart. It didn't really make much sense, but it's virtual highlights, so what do you do?
Right, exactly. Thanks everyone for listening, watching, viewing, liking, subscribing, and sharing. All of that stuff goes a long way to helping out the podcast. If you'd like any additional info, you can go to sequencebreakpodcast.com. All of our past episodes, everything's on there. You'll find everything there. If you'd like to watch live, follow the Sequence Break Twitter. That is Sequence Break PC, and you can join in, ask some questions, watch the whole thing live. It does happen. It's not really a set time, but I do post when I go live. Everything else, if you have any questions or anything like that, podcast at sequencebreakpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.